Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. For those who are new to the channel, my name's Sean, also known as Film Guru, and I started this channel ultimately to have my say on particular movies and TV shows as well as a variety of film content. So thanks for joining. So today I thought I'd do something kind of different a little bit. Rather than doing individual reviews of the Fear Street films there's been on Netflix, I kind of want to talk about all of them as a whole story. I will go through and talk about individual things I liked about each of them, but ultimately I want to talk about them as a whole and to talk about what I enjoyed overall about the whole experience. So I'll start with the first one, 1994. In this one, the film focuses on a small town that has seen its fair share of death and violence, to the point that people think it's cursed. A group of teens find themselves accidentally encountering an ancient evil that is responsible for a series of brutal murders. The evil has been plaguing the town for more than 300 years. It's up to them to try and work out what's going on and how they can stop this evil once and for all. Being a little late to the party with this review, I know people didn't only love this first film. I really enjoyed it. I loved all the references and the feel of Scream. I liked the slasher genre, and I really think they did a good job with that. And the characters were interesting and developed enough that I was able to care about them. And I thought it was well executed in that regard. What I liked most was very nostalgic about that time, about the 90s and the horror films that came out of that sort of era. And I really love the use of music. I just think it's a really interesting way to craft a world and to introduce us to a slasher film in a period of time that they were at the height. I thought the opening of this film was really great, with Mia Hawke playing the character at the start. I wish she was in it more, but I thought she was really great here. I love the way it was executed. I liked the sort of eeriness and the creepiness and the sort of suspense that was crafted and created in this first part. I really thought it was well done, and I had high hopes the rest of the film was going to be like this. I just felt after the start the film sort of differed a little bit from what I thought the film was going to be like. I thought all the leads did a great job, all the actors were great, but I think the real standouts here is Mia Hawke at the start. I thought she was great. Benjamin Flores Jr., who plays Josh, who plays the main girl's brother, he's great. He's the one that sort of knows what's going on and he works it out and he's able to help them. And he's a real, driving force for them to work out what's going on. And I think he's really well used. There's some humorous moments. There's even this sort of love story aspect to his character, which I really loved. And he was a real standout for me. I like the visual sense of the film. I think it really captured the 90s in many ways. And it's so refreshing to watch a movie without mobile phones. I miss that time and period when we didn't have mobile phones all the time. I like the ancient evil that we see and this sort of myth around what's going on. And the sort of killers that this evil controls is really great. There's a sequence that takes place in a supermarket at the end of the film that's really gruesome and violent, and I really loved what they did with that. And for me, there's something about films like this where a group of teens have to band together and work out what's going on to try and stop it. And they can't go to the authorities or they can't tell their parents because no one believes them. And it's up to them to sort of work out what's happening and how to stop it. And I think that's something I really like and enjoy with these sort of movies. I thought it was solid, and I enjoyed this particular one. Part 2, 1978. This one takes place straight after the ending of the first part, and then we're introduced to a character that has experienced this before, has been through this whole thing, and she begins to tell Dina and Josh the story of what transpired for her and how she's connected to this whole thing. So we're transported back to 1978 to this particular camp called Camp Nightwing. And this is just very traditional of Friday the 13th. You've got camp counselors, you've got kids. We're introduced to these characters and things start to unfold and happen. And then ultimately a killer appears and starts picking off people one by one in really violent and aggressive ways. We're introduced to new characters and characters we connect to. And there's kind of this idea, you're not quite sure which of the characters is telling the story, and we find that out later in the film. And it once again looks at things escalate when this evil spirit begins wreaking havoc on them. They have to quickly work out what's happening and how they can stop it, which leads to a bloody confrontation, revealing certain things we didn't know before. And once again, there's things about this film I enjoyed and things I didn't. So I'll start with the things I did like. I liked the setting. I liked the Ziggy character and her sister and the character who would ultimately become the sheriff. I kind of liked those three characters. I liked the third act of the film, and the sort of when the horror starts is really well done. It sort of feels nostalgic of that time and captures the look and feel of that, and I like that. I kind of like the world we're introduced to, and I like the sort of story they're telling and what transpires in the end and how that leads into the current moment in 1994, but also leads to the film after that, 1666. The real standout here for me is Ziggy, played by Sadie Sink. I think she's fantastic here. She's the best character in these first two films. I think she's the most interesting character. I think she really shines here. I think the music was pretty well used and put together here, and the aspects of learning a bit more about who Sarah Fiers was really great. But that's really all I liked about it. I didn't feel a connection to it like I really expected or wanted to. It wasn't as good as I thought it could have been. The main things I didn't like about it is they created this mystery. So when we're introduced at the beginning in the film, it was still set in 1994 with this particular character telling us a story. There's this mystery about which sister she is, and I didn't think we really needed that. I think that caused this separation and this split focus on these two sisters, and one was more interesting than the other. And I know that they did that to add a bit more suspense and a bit more things going on in the film, but I just didn't like that aspect. I didn't think we really needed the mystery. I think there was just something added to create suspense that we didn't really need. But by far the biggest problem with the film, in my opinion, is it's filled with really obnoxious and annoying characters that I didn't care about at all. There was no real development besides the three characters I mentioned. It just felt like, here are these characters, we want you to care. And I just struggled to really care about them. I didn't understand why they had to make characters like this. Because, yes, in some of the Friday the 13th movies, the characters are annoying and frustrating, but there's at least always a few that are quite well done. Most aspects of this sort of genre, especially the first Friday the 13th, they're all characters you like and enjoy and care about, where this sort of lacks that. Yeah, and even though I liked aspects of this film, I didn't like it as much as the first one, and I felt there was many things they could have done better, and it was a little disappointing in the end. Number 3, final part in the trilogy, 1666. So once again, the film starts at the end of the second movie, and it sort of shows this idea that the Dina character kind of gets transported or becomes Sarah Fiers, and we get sent back to 1666. And we experience the world through Dina, who is actually Sarah. And I kind of like what they did there. They brought back all the characters they had in the two previous films and allowed them to play different characters here. I thought that was really great, and it allowed you to feel a bit more connected to the story and the characters in that regard. And they weren't just throwaway characters that were in the first two films. They brought them back to serve another purpose, and I liked that. And in that regard, it felt a lot like American Horror Story, which I kind of liked. Not as good as American Horror Story, but at least they were trying their own thing within that realm, and I kind of like what they did. I really love the setting here. I really like, there's something about sort of Salem sort of era and the sort of witch trials and the fear that people had of devils and a variety of things that I really like. I like it sort of set in this small village in this particular era. I like people are fearful of the devil and think there are witches around and stuff like that. I really like that. I think that's really clever, and there's something about that I really enjoy, especially from history. And ultimately here we see what happened, what transpired to lead to the two previous films and what led to these characters being where they are. It reveals a truth that we thought we knew from the beginning, but we didn't, and they sort of do that, and that's a really refreshing element to it. I really loved that they did that, because I felt that it was starting to go in a direction you expect and become a little cliched, but by doing what they did in the third one, it sort of changed it and it became much more interesting. I like that. I like the fact that this third film isn't really about stopping the evil. It's about showing us how it began and what transpired and what they can learn from what happened in this village to help them stop what's happening in their current world. I thought that was great. I thought all the performances were great of all the mains, all the characters and actors they brought back from the first two films. I think they did a great job and played very different characters, and characters I felt a bit more connected to and found a bit more interesting than I did in the previous film. I think Kiana Marina, who plays Dina, and also Sarah, is really great here. I think she really stands out here and shines here. I think she's much better than we see in the two previous films. And I think she just invests so much more in this character that we really care for him and really connected to. And I think she does a fantastic job. Something else I did like about this film, especially towards the end and things that transpire, is the way they sort of came back to anchoring points. They introduced something and they closed it out. They answered that. And I thought that was a really great little tiny thing I enjoyed, because it felt like a full closure that we got with the trilogy that we don't always get. That sometimes they leave threads and things hanging out and never answer them, where this actually accomplished that. Ultimately, there isn't really much about this film I didn't like. I like the era, I like the setting, I like the characters, I like the story, I like the way the film unfolds. And I even like when we return back to 1994 and them going up against this ancient evil and the killers again is really well done. And I really was impressed by this. And I thought it felt a little different to what we saw in the first half of 1666, but it still adds a great conclusion to this story. And this one is by far my favourite of the trilogy. I think it is the best one because of the things I mentioned. It just felt like a story I really connected to and really loved. I think overall, these three films were well done. There was aspects I didn't enjoy about the first two, but I still had fun with them. And as a trilogy, I think it is really well put together and serves a great purpose. The third one is a great conclusion to a very interesting series. I liked that Netflix took a chance and did something like this. And yes, there are conflicting things throughout it, and there are things that people didn't enjoy. And I think a lot of times people are missing the point about these. They're all about nostalgic feel. They're not about introducing something new or refreshing, but it's that nostalgic feel. It's that period that they're setting that they're trying to recapture. I think it captures that quite well. And as a horror fan, I thought this was a great trilogy, and I enjoyed many aspects to it. So overall, I thought this was well done. Not perfect, but still a lot better than a lot of the horror films that we have these days. And I felt really transported back to that particular time, which I really loved. So in the end, I'd give the first one 4, the second one 3.5, and the last one 4 again, and it being my favourite part. Anyway, thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Letterboxd. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.